Good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied voice, Justin. I'm upgrading Justin to just a disembodied voice today. I've decided, I'm going to give him all, possibly all cred that he's actually physically there somewhere in the studio. I've decided I've been shortchanging him on the body parts. So, hi. Hi, everybody. How are you all? Looking at chat. Hey, Chia, haven't seen you for a while. How's it been going? And Anki. Hello, Lord Nobody. I still think you should change your handle to Lord Somebody, but that's just me. Me and my, ultra positive attitude. Everybody's a somebody. To somebody. But yes, all right. Well, everybody's kind of busy. Good morning, D. Clearman. I guess I did hit the button pretty fast after Justin put the stream up, so it's probably not too many people in the chat yet. Hey, Cookie. Yay. So yeah, Sphinxy. Let's get some basing. Let's do some bass. Oh, unfortunately the camera's like, hey, a card. I want to focus on that. It's a silly thing. It is a silly thing. So colors. I was thinking about that this morning. Let's see. I believe we did use desert stone and desert sand for this so far, which are the colors I created specifically to mimic Egyptian stone color. Now, given Egyptian stone color does vary by by where you are, just like in any other geographic location. But when I was trying to come up with a good sand color and stone color for Egypt, I looked at a lot of pictures and decided this was a good and unique color. It's nice and neutral, but it's still nice and warm. And if you want to warm it up more, then you can use a more yellowy color to highlight it, which is why we have our friend Osirian sand here. Ooh, all the sand colors today. And maybe I'll grab just a tiny bit of NMM Gold highlight if I want to push it a little bit more sunny. And for shadows, I think we were using brown liner. Let me look. Let me get my glasses on. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was using brown liner. Now, I may not stick with that, or I may glaze over it, because I've been studying a lot of light lately. And shadows are cool if they're getting, sky reflection in the shade. Like, if the thing that's bouncing light back up them is itself shade. That's when you get sky reflection. But if you're surrounded by a bunch of sand and stone out in the open, then chances are the stuff that's around you that's going to be reflecting light back at you is pretty warm. And then you get a warm shadow. Morning, everybody. Morning. It is a happy Thursday because tomorrow Overwatch League starts. So I am super happy. I will be totally watching the first two games. Totally happy to have my Overwatch League back. My secret, not so secret sports addiction. Esports addiction. All right, so I think I am still going to use the brown liner for coolingness, but I think that we're probably going to end up glazing something a little bit warmer over it in the end. So we shall start out with our happy little brown liner, because it does allow us to bring out these cracks. I'm going to get this in focus if it's the last thing I do. See, now we're at the point where it's really hard to get Sphinxy in focus, because she's got so many different levels of detail on her right now. There we go. That's better. There. Now we can see it. So all these little cracks and details that we're bringing out with our brown liner, that's a very nice thing to have. So I do want to continue that here. And we also want to look at maybe adding some paint, some faded paint on these stones in places. So I may experiment with that. But first I need to block in all these shadows. I see I was kind of playing with a warmer highlight there. I think I went too yellow with it. When you're trying to do like a sunlit surface, it can be very difficult because it's warm, but it's not as warm as sometimes we think it is. It's not as yellow as sometimes we think it is. Of course, a lot of 2D artists will just push it and go very golden, especially at times of day, like in the later in the afternoon, which they call the golden hour, then the light does turn very yellow. But in general, most sunlight doesn't hit that level of gold. So if we're trying to do a sunlit effect, we don't want to over yellow it. I'm just going to mix up everything I'm using. So brown liner 9064, desert stone was my base. It's 9431. Its friend and partner right next to it in the line is desert sand 9432. We'll be using that as well. And then we're also going to introduce Osirian sand because it is, notice, it has a lot of yellow in it. So that whole thing about sunlight being warm but not too yellowy, I think that Osirian sand might be our friend. I've been liking Osirian sand an awful lot lately. Like, I really need to order, like, some extra bottles of it. Because I'm all about it. As a highlight and off-white, I'm all about it. It's like a true yellow off-white that's slightly warm, unlike linen, which is slightly cold and has a bit of brown in it. So I actually like it better than I like linen, even though it's yellowier and not as white. For my purposes. It's hard to say. I think it's just rubble. There might be some coins here. Declearment, it looks like there might be a couple coins, like especially down here. This looks like coinage also. I haven't decided whether to paint it as coinage or rubble because you could go either way with it. Both, Shadow Raven. Both. It's both. So yeah, there's no, that looks, see, because it's hard to tell. Yeah, there probably are some coins back here. It's Sphinxy's tip pile. She's got a tip jar, and it's called her rubble pile. She likes to, like, you know, have some glitter on her rubble pile. I don't see anything other than, I mean, there's a little square thing there we could possibly paint as a gemstone. The danger with treasure piles is you can go way too far with them. I do appreciate that here, like, there's some small areas that definitely could be painted as coins, but if you chose to just paint it as stone, you'd be fine. Because sometimes the treasure pile can be just too much. Like, if you have a monster sitting on a huge treasure pile, almost inevitably, everyone will end up looking at the treasure pile and not the monster, because it's just too glittery and too distracting. Yeah, pretty much, David. Declearman. So yeah, let's get our Osirian sand. And if I do the painted, like the faded paint effect, guys, it's the last thing we do. Because you want everything highlighted and shaded first, and then you want to suggest, with glazes, your faded paint. If you enjoyed the potentially deadly riddles, leave a tip. I like that idea, Shadow Raven. I could totally see Sphinxy with that little hand-lettered sign next to her. Oh. My Osirian sand is too eager to come out of the bottle. It almost did more than 4 drops. It may have done 4.5. But yeah, I do need to put this on my list. I need to make a list of more paint to order. Dang it. So let's see here. Let's just make that list now. Let's start making it. I just ordered paint from Reaper is the damnable thing. But when you paint every freaking day, not just with you guys, but then doing my own stuff, then you go through a lot of paint. Reaper paint order. Trying to think if there was anything else I forgot last time I ordered. But I think I'm okay. I need to look at my pure white supply because I've gone through at least 2 bottles of that since I've been here. That lets you know how much pure white I go through, right? Hello, Tristodoma. So all right. I'm keeping my list of paints to reorder. Okay, so that'll start us out pretty well, I think. So our colors are brown liner, desert stone, desert sand, and Osirian sand. So we have a little bit of NMM gold highlight waiting in the wings, just in case I decide we need it. But I think the Osirian might be yellow enough for us, so we'll see. So I'm gonna hit each of these with, since we've already got a base coat, I'm gonna hit each of these with 2 drops of water. So it's a 2-to-1. My standards start out if I've already got a base down. And we'll see how that goes. I don't necessarily need to, since I have 1 bottle of most things, I don't need a spreadsheet of what I own. I'm pretty good at remembering that. But, remembering what to reorder. Because, like, I'm pretty sure I have an extra bottle of pure white around here, but I think I'm actually getting, like, lower down in my store. I don't have as much of it as I used to. So it's time to order like 6 bottles. Okay, maybe not 6, but 4. And here I'm just not even bothering to rinse out my brush. I'm just mixing a little bit of the previous color into the other color. And I'm going to do that even with my brown liner. It's not going to really affect brown liner very much because brown liner has a heavy load of black in it, but it is going to soften it slightly, make it not quite as dark. This is by design. Yeah, I think most people say that they like to keep track of like a spreadsheet or a checklist or something to figure out what paints they've got if they're a paint addict. I think it's a good sanity plan, shall we say. Let me take a slug of water here. Got a tickle in my throat today. Allergies have been interesting lately. Alrighty. Hey, Crowley. Yeah. Alright, so let's get close. Since we're focused. We are focused. So pretty much here, I'm just going to use my brown liner, which is quite thin. So it's the nice thing about thinning the brown liner is it'll give you more of a natural shadow effect. It's quite thin. See if I brush it there? It doesn't show up all that much. And so if you want to blend it with your desert color, you can. You can do all sorts of wet blending with it at this point. I don't want to go too crazy though. Too crazy. There. But I do like, since Sphinxie's kind of a naturalistic model the way we've done her, I do like to go with a much lighter line. So although this is lining, it is lining with a much thinner version of brown liner. So the shadow isn't quite as stark as it would be otherwise. And I could even go lighter with this. Like looking at it right now, I'm like, I could put another drop of water in this and be pretty happy with it. The other option is just to paint a little bit of our desert sand over it to minimize it a little bit. You can always tune very easily that way when you're lining. If you line and you're like, whoa, that's way too bold, just take a little bit of your base color, which in this case is Desert Stone, and just paint it right over the top once the brown liner has dried. Yeah, I've heard Paint Rec is a good app. Most of the time I'm not too persnickety about trying to have a lot of colors on hand because I can mix almost anything. But there's definitely times where when I take a real liking to a color like the Osirian Sand, where I just like, I need an extra bottle of this. Especially when it's something like Pathfinder, where you never know if it's, you know, going to stay around forever, depending on sales and stuff. So this is why I always tell people, if you like a color, buy it while you can. You just never know. And if you hold off, you know, maybe that's that little bit of sales that could have kept it alive. If it's a color you're really fond of, don't be afraid to have an extra bottle. An extra bottle will not kill you. All right, and we've got a bit of a chip there because Julie has cleverly sculpted in some scuffed out areas. So I'm going to take a mixture of my brown liner and my Desert Stone. I'm going to kind of shade that chipped, destroyed area here. And a little bit here, a little bit there. Just kind of sketching in some of this. It doesn't need, on stonework, this does not need to be precise. Yeah, like Meadow Green. Although Bobby was probably well aware, Bryce, that if he whined enough, Ron would shut him up, would bring it back just to shut him up. There's another color, too, that Doug Cohen really liked, and then we put Doug's book out, so I sure hope that Ed didn't keep it canceled. Because it's in a lot of skin tone recipes that Doug likes. So, it's just the way it is. That's why those of us who do these Twitch streams or teach classes or whatever are always talking about the paints that we feel are like really, really useful, because we want you guys to buy them because then they'll stay in print. We also don't want you to miss out. Like with the Peacock Green and the Swamp Green, where people who are newer to the hobby are like, what? And we're like, oh no, best colors ever. Best non-selling colors ever. Seriously, guys. People underestimate greens. See, poor meadow green. That's the same thing. We have all these really beautiful, useful, interesting off greens that just suffered because people weren't sure how to use them. Or didn't think they would need a brilliant dark olive green like swamp green. I'm still sore about that. I mean, I can mix it and all, but still. All right, so we're just bringing out the details here. Yeah, if you like organizational paint apps, Paint Rack is the one I hear about most often. If you're afraid of getting duplicates. At this point, it's like, I'm pretty sure I have all the colors I really want to have. And I just recently went through all my bottles to sort out ones where I had extras or didn't have the color I wanted. So I'm pretty up on my paint collection right now. Pretty hip. I know what I got. And I do tend to hoard bottles of pure white, so it would not surprise me if I actually have like 4. And thinking that I have 1 is just an illusion. Alright, so let's see. Where is my light? My light is here. Which means that probably, if my light is coming in this direction, then this is going to be kind of in shadow. So let's do that. Let's try that out and see how we like it. Since I've lined it all, if the light is falling on the front of our treasure pile here, and on this surface right here, that means that this surface is going to be turning away from the light a little bit, which means that a shadow should be applied slightly over the whole surface. Yeah, Haram. I mean, yeah, specific colors, but let's face it. I mean, you know, you could get close and you're fine. Like any person who's going to call you out on not having the perfect shade of Feldgrau for, 1941 or whatever is kind of silly in my opinion. I've always felt that way though. But that is why I paint ancients. If I'm going to paint historicals, I tend to gravitate toward ancients. That and I just like ancients models better. I like doing Vikings and Egyptians and Assyrians. All right, so that's probably going to be, we shaded that down a bit. Yeah, button counters are a pain. I want to ask either tonight or tomorrow. I need to remember. Yeah, just write it down on a sticky note. Put it right on your computer screen. Assuming it's not, a question I can answer, but I'm out of the loop on much Reaper things. So, not being directly on site anymore. So then we've got our back part. We're going to do this real quick too. Yep. I mean, that's why when people talk about using pens, I kind of giggle, Twisted Oma, because I can get a better line with a brush than I could ever get with a pen. And the brush is better able to fit into tiny, tight spots than a pen is. But it does take practice, right, to build that control. And many people would rather just not. They'd rather just, well, why not use the tool that I already know how to use and have good control with? So that's totally valid. Do what you like. But I can get a much finer line with the brush than I can with a pen. And I get the subtleties that a pen can't give me. I can switch from lining to shading with this and without even, blinking. And you can't do that with a pen, so. But dye jobs, Harumph, there is no perfect. There is no perfect. Okay, there's perfect if you have decided that this particular unit wandered out and, hasn't been, is fresh from the parade ground and has never been in combat and, just wandered out of its, manufacturing facility. Then I guess there's perfect, although people could even yell at you about dye lots at that point. But you know, it's like, don't freak out yourself. I don't know. I mean, I look at the differences even, like we at Reaper, give you an example. We at Reaper, you know, we're in an industrial color creation facility that is very, very conscious of the propensity for color shift, which I'll tell you, the governments in middle of the war were not. And even we get color shifts between lots sometimes if there's just been too much, like if somebody misreads a formula slightly or something like that. Like even we get shifts in our colors that we then have to correct. So I look at like a wartime nation who really, you know, like exact color matching is the last thing on their mind. And I'm like, yeah, my Feldgrau can be a little off. My Dunkelgelb can be a little off. It's all right. Yeah, factory fresh Panther 4, right? But I mean, it's that. That's why I think if you're hard on yourself, if it makes you frustrated, don't let it make you frustrated. Be for that reason, right? Like if you really want accuracy, you can do, and if the research makes you happy, then by all means do it. But do understand, I really feel, and I think this has been confirmed by numerous military sources as well, that sometimes they just splashed the paint on and they didn't really care if it was a match or not, you know? And sometimes they didn't even have the right color and they just went for close enough. And it depended, of course it depended on whether you were in the later in the war, earlier in the war, and which war you were in, and all that sort of thing. Totally get it. But I believe you should do what makes you happy, and if the color matching makes you happy, then do it. But if it just makes you frustrated and annoyed, then you know, don't. Yeah, Luftwaffe colors, though, I'll tell you, Ed, our CEO, he collects World War II paraphernalia, especially German, and he has some authentic cloth items from the war period, and he gave me, you know, passed me a couple and said, hey, make me a Feldgrau, and here's your examples. And I'll tell you, though they were not the same color. The color varied by the type of fabric because how dye, you know, takes varies widely by the type of fabric you've got. And it was very difficult for me. Like I had to essentially make something that was in between all of them and matched none of them in order to get close to these different historical examples. And those were historical samples I had right in front of me, like in my hand, staring at it with my glasses. And I had to make a compromise color. I would have had to make 3 different Feldgraus. Yeah, it is. So that's why when people talk about uniform colors, I'm just like, eh? But even paint, like, okay, so your paint for your tank is going to be made from a person like me, right? Except working during the war in a paint factory. And I'm going to be throwing in the formula. I'll bet you money, like if we could dig out a World War II, like paint manufacturer, they would be following a specific formula in a specific base to produce all the paint. And guess what? It wouldn't match every time because it never matches every time because your paint companies have they have a range that they aim for. They don't have a precise level that they aim for as far as like certain parameters. So if I take different batches of deep base from Reaper and I try to mix tanned skin in them, they will vary. Every one will vary. It'll still be recognizably close to tanned skin, but it'll be lighter or darker. So that's why I'm just like, I don't know if I buy that, like, the tank colors were more precise than the cloth colors because I come from this background, because I know how, like, Reaper has been frustrated. That's why Reaper thought about doing its own paint chemistry department. Like, but we'd have to actually, like, buy, you know, like, pay a real chemist and have a lot of heavier equipment to do it. But that's why. Because we can't control the companies that we get our bases from. You know, they have a tolerance level that's looser than ours. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously I wasn't there. But darn it, those people... Oh, yeah, they do vary quite a bit, don't they? And I think that's why, too. So understand, Harumph, that the history of Vallejo, it was started by the grandfather, and he was like me. Like, he would hand mix or hand check every batch, and he was very persnickety about it, right? And he was hands-on until he was like in his 80s, I think. He was hands-on at the company. But then he eventually handed it off to his kids. And the way I hear it is that the daughter is like the business arm now, and she does the business stuff, but she doesn't work with the paint directly. And the son is, you know, not all that interested in the family business. Now, this is all just hearsay, so I could be totally wrong. But so what it comes down to is Grandpa Vallejo is not personally checking every batch anymore. And so then that's when you get that lack of involvement, that's when you get paint mixed specifically to formula. But like I said, you may not have the exact same additive or resin parameters from batch to batch. So that's where you get shift. Yeah. Bryce, you're funny. But it's bases are different chemical compositions. They're not always different colors, Pendrake. When I say base, I mean the water and resin emulsion that you mix paint into. So if you go to Home Depot, you're going to see a whole bunch of bases that are all white. Or you're going to see a whole bunch of bases that they call deep or ultra deep. And if you open one up, it will look like they're the same color. But they have different chemical compositions, sometimes different amounts of pigment, sometimes different types of pigment. But the pigment is not the point of the base. If the base has pigment added to it, then it's just like it's a colored base. And it's done usually for cost efficiency, where they use a cheaper pigment to color the base. Or they may use a higher solids pigment to color the base to give it better hiding. You know, it's a product. It's all a product. So it's the perceived. Look at me, I'm highlighting stuff and I shouldn't be. Hello, happy Manicoral. Yeah, bases are not pigments. Bases are the resin-water emulsion, usually with a bunch of silicates and other stuff added, that paint is mixed in. You add pigment and additives to a base, or additional additives to a base. See, now I started highlighting it. I got totally distracted. Should not have highlighted there, and now I'll have to fix it. That's okay. I can put a shadow over everything. I think I want a little bit more crack here, though. This is the point where you could also freehand. If you decide that you look at this and you're like, I want more cracks up here, by all means, freehand them in. I'm going to mix up my paint a little bit better. But I think that's why you get variation in some paint lines, is that the people making it mix it to a specific formula in a specific base every time. And so essentially for them, it's close enough. So I'm going to add another crack here. Just doing a little line, little bit of that, and then we can highlight this crack and make it more realistic. But anyway, so yeah, paint production. The frustrations of paint production. But yeah, I don't really know about historical companies. For all I know, the tank, it could be the government was very, very persnickety about the color of the tanks and stuff like that. It may have varied by the government too. I know I've read that during some of the war times, the tanks were just like they slapped any color on they had because they didn't have anything else. But yeah. Yeah, they need to do the dragon wing test, right? Graffiti. It's funny, Shadow Raven. Yeah, Val, that's exactly it. Yeah, because they're using your precise formula pigments, and they're adding it to different buckets of base. And those different buckets of base can have slightly different tolerance levels for pigments like white. Because, usually you're dealing with a base that already has some white pigment loaded into it. Now, I do need to factor in, to Harumph's credit, he could be right, because the tanks and all that are solvent-based paints, right, when they're doing a vehicle. And solvent-based paints tend to not be preloaded, by my understanding. So in that case, they would probably be much closer to standard colors. Yeah, it's a tricky subject. I mean, because, you know, nobody who was doing it is really still around at this point. I don't remember. Has the last, like, living World War II veteran died? I don't think, no, it couldn't be, because it's only, well, 70 years. Well, 70, yeah, 90, they would have had to be, like, 20. There's got to be a few still alive, right? Do you know, Harumph? If the veterans, any veterans, like, what kind of, how many veterans from World War II are still around? Or no, maybe it's way too, maybe I'm thinking way too, because 60, 80, still quite a few left? Okay, like in their 80s now, right? Good. Well, see, that we could find somebody and ask them. It's such a loss when you lose the last of the people who lived through something world shaking, I think, because you lose the ability to ask somebody who was actually there, like, what was it like, right? As a writer, that always has fascinated me. Like, I felt that way when my grandfather died, because he was a pretty simple, you know, farmer, but he lived through so much, so many changes, right? When he was a kid, like, it was still horse-drawn carriages. There were no cars. Like, and you miss that opportunity of asking, you know, how was it like? Like, what did you do? Like, if you wanted to go out with your family, like, you know, did you own a carriage? What if you didn't own a carriage? Did you just walk? Did you pay a carriage? You know, it's like, were there taxis? Horse taxis, right? Yeah. But, you know, it's a totally different world. And, you know, everything changing. I mean, I remember when there was no internet, right? And so it's just like, for sure, I'm happy there is an internet now. But there will come a time when there will be people alive, and nobody will be alive who still remembers that how it was when there was no internet and you had to just go to the library and hope there was a good source book, you know? Yeah, Pendrake. With movies, you never know how realistic they are. But yeah, I could believe it. 90s and up, there's a few still kicking. Oh, you're right. Yep. Queen Elizabeth. David's been watching The Crown. So we're up on our British history currently. Or our pseudo-British history, since he did take liberties with several things. I think one of the British mags was essentially saying this is a quick British history lesson for Americans, but it should be taken with a slight grain of salt. But in general, things happened when they are portrayed, but the how of them may not be quite right. Just getting a lot of shadows in on this side. Pink submarine, yeah. Yeah, see, that's crazy, isn't it, Shadow Raven? Like, just the perspective there, right? Like, sailing to India, back when sailing was the way to get around from continent to continent. And then to be able to see a supersonic jet break the sound barrier. Like, that's just insane. Like, I think some of our changes are a little less physical, but if self-driving cars become a thing, which seems to be the way everybody's going, like, it seems to be a lot of push toward autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles, like that could be as profound a change, right? There's just, it's so interesting to me. It's just so interesting to me how we change. And all these, like, it's weirdly though, all the home delivery stuff is a kind of a fallback to an earlier time, right? When they used to have the milkman delivering milk, you know, or eggs or stuff to the door. So some of these things are things that the concept was around, but never on this scale before. That's why I want to live till I'm 100. I want to see what happens. I want to be one of those people going, I remember. Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome, Pendrake. Yeah, 1890s. Yep. Wow, Twisted Oma. That's super impressive. That's quite a history right there. Yeah, I find it just so fascinating, like how much has changed in such a relatively short time, and like just the perspective you get. Like, how does that change your perspective on the world and on change? It's interesting stuff, for sure. And I wish more people kept journals, like, consistently. Like, it used to be we could go and people always wrote letters to each other, and that served as a kind of a journal thing, right? But now that we're out of that habit, like, and there's emails, but our older people often don't quite, aren't quite, they don't use email that way. Like, so you don't get that daily testament of how life is, or was, rather. And I think we miss out. That was always my big regret, kind of, with my grandparents, is that Grandpa, like, had lived through all this stuff, but, he never, like, nothing of his life was written down. Like, we don't have, I don't think we have a whole lot. We have some old photographs and stuff. But my dad's side was better about recording things. Tanks or airplanes. Wow, that's a big change, Pendrake. So, yeah, your horsey, not so much. How would you like a tank? Oh, yeah, dial up. Right, Norscan, right? Yeah, yeah. Came in a little box that yelled at you. That's a super way to put it, Rump. I love it. I remember that too. But yeah, it's kind of sobering to realize that, we're getting to the point where when we are older, the majority of humanity will not be able to remember a time without internet, The internet will have been there. So I'm going to trace some of these lines up top. Even though we're probably going to have some light falling here and it's going to minimize these cracks, they're still going to be slightly present. And here behind the Sphinx, we're going to have some deeper shadows. So using a thinner line for this can help because you're essentially almost painting with a wash. So it's going to want to go into the crack. So stuff like that. Arrested for murder in 1978. Yeah, that's pretty impressive too, Valinor. That's a huge change. Well, it's like when Berkeley Breathed revived Bloom County, right? A few years back. And he had essentially had Opus sleeping through everything from the time that he stopped the comic to the time he resurrected it, and the internet and cell phones and all that, right? So he got to essentially play on all of that because Opus hadn't ever met any of it. Those who are not familiar with Bloom County need to, like, be smacked lightly. But it was a good perspective thing, right? Perspective on how things have changed in that time. So I'm going to see that soft shadow that I put back there. Dabber, we'll make it. We'll make it through the year. I think there's a band. I think the band's called the Mountain Goats, but they have a song called Next Year, and it's essentially a whole I am going to live through this year if it kills me. Let's see. So just emphasizing the shadow. Going to emphasize all of this shadow is too. Yeah, that's fair, Shadow Raven. I mean, everybody's got their favorite web comics, and everybody has their newspaper comics in the olden days, right? There were some that people loved that I just detested and didn't like at all. But I liked Bloom County. I think lately with comic books, it's more I have to like the art style. There we go. So we're getting shadow and shadow and shadow and more shadow. We're blocking in all our shadows today, and then we'll start our highlights. I'm pretty happy with this so far. Block in wherever I think there's going to be a heavier shadow. Calvin and Hobbes was lovely. Yeah, most people did, I think, Max Styles. Yeah, the Star Trek were fun. You live in the Twin Cities, so you have your doubts. Gotta be an optimist. Gotta believe. Can't make a good difference in the world if you don't stick around for it. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think we could fix these days or improve on, but it's gonna take passionate people working on those things and giving a lot of their energy to the process. Like, it's the same thing with being in corporate America, right? It's like the projects that get done are the projects that somebody makes their baby and puts time and energy and effort into getting done and keeping on track. So I kind of think of the world kind of the same way. You have so many things fighting for our attention, and there's so much that could be done that it's going to take some good people with a lot of heart to get those things done, to concentrate on it, and to make sure that it isn't a project that's dropped. That's the way I kind of think of it. I am an optimist, though. Like disclaimer, Anne is a raging optimist about the world. All right, so that's a little bit light still for being in shadow. I'm going to bring that in. So what we want here is on the shadow side of a model, we still need some highlights. There's still going to be some light falling over here. It's, in fact, I probably need to lighten up this back edge. I need to think about the angle of my light. Now, Sphinxy's blocking that pretty well. So when you're thinking about angle of light, figure out what angle you're lighting and then kind of like carry it down in a line. I use my brush as a pointer for this all the time to kind of figure out. And you still need different levels of shadow because you're still going to be able to see details on the shadow side of the model. But you don't want to have everything at the same level if you're doing that sort of thing. So I'm going to paint a light glaze of my brown liner over this area. Yeah, I mean, I'm somebody, okay, to give you an idea, my dog club, I'm all involved with Shiloh Shepherds, which is a rare breed. And rare breeds, when they are small, are extremely vulnerable to just disappearing. You need, passionate people who are willing to put in the work to keep the breed going for a long time. Consider that, like, back in, like, the 90s, I think the average, quote-unquote, lifespan for a dog breeder was 7 years. And so if your breed is really small and kind of in trouble, like, you need breeders to stick around for more than that. And I was one of the people who really fought for a long time to get our breed to get over this terrible place that we were in. And I'm still fighting. And it's 12 years later, and I'm still going to be fighting 10 years from now. But without me and, a handful of other really passionate people and all the breeders who are, just putting in their time and making sure that they keep their part of the gene pool going, without that, yeah, the Shiloh Shepherd, who knows what it'd be dead in like 10 years, probably. It's just like, or maybe not, but it would be going on in a non-healthy way. So I use that perspective, since that's a direct real world example that I've worked with, is if you have the people who are passionate about preserving the thing, then you're already on a better street. And like, my ex-husband told me he felt that I was doomed to fail. And I'm still here. And the dogs are still here. So, any advice? Yeah, Lord Nobody. Actually, I did basic feathered wings. These are the advanced feathered wings, okay? But I did a very basic one on Spirit Beast. You have two choices with wings. You can either go fast, quick, and dirty, or you can go, like, super intensive like I did on these. And where is Spirit Beast? Here is Spirit Beast. The easiest way to do feathered wings, if you are a beginner, is to use washes and glazes. So here is Spirit Beast. Spirit Beast. Spirit Beast started out with a color like this. Always start light, Hi, Splat. I not only care about it, I put hours of work into it every week. So, for free. Because it's volunteer, it's a nonprofit organization for breed preservation. I am the go-to for genetic disease in our breed. All right, so, and I worked with UC Davis on our genetic diversity project. I was the liaison, Bryce. So I have my name on a UC Davis paper. My name is on that paper as the chief contributor in their dog genetics department. So that's one of the proudest things of my life, actually. So, all right, so here we go. So, nobody, if you start with this, so start light with this. Start with a really light color, no matter how dark you want it to end up. And then you want to thin your paint kind of to a wash consistency. Think about the colors that you want to use and start with like the medium and work darker and darker and darker. And just put the wash in areas where you want it and use your darker colors to kind of shade around the rows of feathers like this. This is all done with just like washes and glazes and thin paint, essentially, that'll just fall into the cracks on the wings here. And I also use some black to just paint onto the edges of the feathers down here. So, Spirit Beast is sold out? Yeah. But this is how it started. And then the first layer looked more like this, and then I moved more of the green in, and then I took some of the bluish color and moved that in, and then I put the bluish color all over the edges, and then I put the black edges on. So, and here I'm doing much the same thing. I'm starting with kind of the pink, and I'm putting actually a green wash over it, which is weird, but it works. And then I'm coming back and putting in maybe just a few highlights around the edges of the feathers, right? So this is very simple feather stuff. Yes, there we go. Quindy just linked for you, Lord Nobody. She linked you the video where I painted this so that you can see it. Yeah, Shilohs are pretty they're pretty gorgeous dogs. I mean, obviously Kiri was one, so. And she was the short-haired variety. Most people are used to the long-haired. There are a couple of different organizations that are trying to guide the breed these days, but we are the one that's using genetics and science. The other ones, not so much. But yeah, they're nice dogs. If you have any questions, obviously I've been involved with the breed for 12 years, so at a high level, I'm a board member and a breed warden. I believe that mixed breed dogs are awesome and purebred dogs are awesome, and they're just like dogs and dogs are awesome, but I do understand the wanting to get a dog with specific traits if you have like a family that needs specific traits. So that's why I do my time in supporting a purebred breed. Although we are not AKC and we are using other breeds to cross into the Shiloh for better health. So some people would say that it means we are no longer a purebred, but gonna get in a shadow color on all of this now. A little bit more water. Good deal, Lord Nobody. Yeah, Dorian, go and watch that video that Quindy linked. That'll give you the simple ones. If you want to see the complex way to do it, then, you know, Sphinxy here is your go-to. So just go back and watch Sphinxy videos. But yeah, the dog stuff is my other part-time job. All right. Yeah, right. And I mean, I'm cool with whatever people. I totally understand the passion of people who love their mixed breeds, and I can't argue with that at all. I actually helped do a puppy evaluation on a litter of Border Collie Whippets. And that's just, those are performance dogs, like they do agility. So like people do that mix pretty regularly for agility because it's so good at it. They're fast and they're super intelligent. So it's like they could like be like mastermind villains really of the dog world. Yeah, I believe in that, Cookie. Yeah, Otter, I know you really like the Cannon dogs. Don't think you're ready for the Sphinx one. No, just start with the basic one, because I do use some of the techniques, some of the same techniques that I used on Spirit Beast I used with Sphinxy, but They're much more targeted. They're just more precise, and it takes a lot longer. Okay, so glazes. Glazes are thinner than washes. That's more of a wash. Hold on, let me focus. Although maybe a little bit thinner, because you don't want it to be dirty on the top surfaces. But if I were to turn this into a glaze, Sleepy, I bring it over here, throw even more water into it, so that's just colored water. See how much it falls off the side of the palette? Don't use a wet palette for this. If you're just starting out, get a well palette. Because the wet palette is going to immediately wick water down into the sponge. Unless you keep your wet palette sopping wet, and then water might wick up. This is just, you can't control it, is my point. So you want to get that, and then you want to use a brush that's big enough to cover the majority of the surface that you're glazing very quickly, because you want to apply the glaze, and then you want to come back, and I actually need to do this, and wick it out of the cracks. Wherever you see a glaze pooling, you gotta take it out of there. Get a dry or damp brush, and here, hold on. Coming back up here, Sphinxy, get in focus again. No, get in focus. There. So wherever you see little bits of fluid, there we go. Little bits of fluid like clinging, you gotta take your brush in there and kind of wick those out. And the reason is that when you have paint that's this consistency, that's so thin, it'll dry in coffee rings. You've broken the paint. You've broken the bonds between the resins and the pigments. And so that's why it doesn't stay together. So glazing is about putting a thin layer down and then coming in and taking off any excess that you see so that you get kind of like just a filter of that color over the top of the area in order to tint the entire area. Not even mutations to original. I mean, they were just traits, right? Like, it wasn't even necessarily a mutation that started any given breed. It was just that somebody wanted what's a good example? The coonhounds. Somebody wanted a coonhound that had a better bell, a better voice, right? More carrying. And so they bred them to beagles, because beagles had that beautiful bugling call that they wanted to hear. They wanted to teach that. Some people took coonhounds and bred them with bloodhounds because they wanted more ground scenting ability. You know, so it wasn't even mutations. It's just traits. And then trying to, like, zero in on those traits. I just put it on a block like this, Benny. So, like, in this worst case scenario, the most rub off I'm getting is, like, just along the edges here. So I've got her stuck on with poster putty. She doesn't actually have too much poster putty sticking around to this. You can see a little bit of it there. That blue bit. So yeah, and then I just handle the block. When I do like flat parts of the model, like before I glued the wings on when I was painting those, I usually keep a small piece. Where did it go? Oh no, I don't know where my bubble wrap went. Oh, well, there's part of it. But I keep a small piece of this really soft bubble wrap, you know, the stuff that, not the stiff stuff, but the stuff that you can really crinkle up. Small piece of that, and I just hold the model with that if I'm working on a bigger model until I glue it together, and then it goes on a block. Yeah, there's a big, yes, you're absolutely right, Sleepy. Like, people will call glazes filters, or they'll call them glazes, or they'll think that something else is a glaze. At its very base, a glaze is putting a thinner layer of paint over another layer of paint in order to tint or change the color somehow. To take it lighter, to take it darker, to take it redder, to take it bluer, take it warmer, take it cooler. But you're putting a very thin layer. And the reason that some people call it filtering is that it's like putting a filter over your camera so that you get a slight golden hue or you get a slight blue hue to it, right? So it's like that. But in general, if you ask a pro painter, like, you know, about glazing, that's pretty much the summary of what they're trying to do, the purpose of a glaze. They may disagree with me on the exact consistency of it, and some of them may do it more strongly. But my personal conviction has always been that it's very easy to just put an additional layer of glaze down if I need it to be darker. But if I put too heavy of a layer down, then I'm stuck with repainting everything. So I don't want that. So I'd rather go with a very, very thin layer and just build it up. than to start too dark and have to go back and highlight and bring up everything. So that's kind of the method behind the madness there. And I think if you talk to any Reaper painter, they'd kind of agree that that's kind of what glazing is. It's just thinning your paint and putting a layer down to uniformly darken or deepen or change a color. It can also be used to hide brush strokes, Sleepy. So in that case, if I had some brush strokes on here that I wanted to hide, if I put a glaze over it or two, then the blending is going to look better. Than if I didn't. So some people use glazes for that as well. Another use for glazes is if you get chalkiness on, say, pale skin tones, you can take your kind of your darker skin color, your shadow or your midtone, do a glaze of that, and it'll knock out the chalkiness. So there are many, many, many uses for glazes. I consider it a core technique, something that's necessary to learn, but it's not that hard. Oh, I dipped my wing in white. How sad. I'll have to fix that. Oh no, can I scrub it off? No, the outer edge is still there. It won't come up. Sometimes, if I had been quicker to notice that my Sphinxie had gotten her wing dipped, oh, maybe it'll come up. I probably have I'm as likely to, like, scrub the paint off the tip. Oh, nope, there we go. Yay, it worked. Yay for water. All right, good. But yeah, so that's just some things that glazes are good for and some rationales for using them. I think there really are a core technique. Like there are some techniques that I don't think are core that I think you can get away without knowing, like wet blending, wet into wet blending or two brush blending. I think you can get away with painting a model perfectly fine without those. They help your speed and they may help you master blending if you're having trouble with, say, layering, more like a wet over dry. But, oh, it is stretch time. It's stretch time, but I'll finish this thought. But, like, wet blending I don't consider, like, something that's necessary. But I do consider that glazing is something that's necessary to, like, help you as a miniature painter. So, just try messing around with some thinner paints and see what you can do, really. Poor wingtip dip. Yeah, but we fixed it. So it's not... She's just trying to get some more style in. She's like, I want some colors on my wingtips. Give me some blue, but I want some other colors too. But yeah, so that's the thing behind glazing. Oh, we're at a really good focus level here. There, she's in focus. We're gonna do that, and we're gonna stretch. But yeah, so glazing, I think, actually, you know what, Sleepy? If you go to my Patreon, I've got a free thing up there, and I think it's for the thinning MSP paints. I think that's what you want to look for. But you should see it, but there's a few free things up on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig. And one of those things is, I think, for thinning MSP paints. And that tells you, if you use Master Series, if you use Reaper paint, it'll tell you how much water versus paint you need for stuff like layering and glazing and washes. It'll give all my different formulas. So that can be a good starting point. Like, it's always a good point to kind of, like, okay, this is kind of the range I want to be in. Now, if you use a very thick paint, like Vallejo or Scale 75 or P3, then you're probably going to have to up that water. But at least it kind of gives you an idea, like the relative ratios, right? So if I can hit layering consistency with most paints doing a 1 to 2 paint to water, and glazing is more like a 1 to 4, then you know that, okay, so it's like double the amount of water between washes or layering and glazes. You know, so maybe that would help you when you're working with your other brand of paint. So that's, anyway, it's free. It's on patreon.com/paintingbig. Painting Big is all one word. And you can also go to the Reaper YouTube. There's a video that goes along with it, and it is also free on Reaper's YouTube, and it is called Thinning MSP Paints. And Quindy, Quindy's probably got the link for that. There we go. Quindy's good. Fantastic. So that's 2 free things. They're going to talk about paint thinning for various applications with MSP. Oh, okay. So Quindy's got it. Quindy's on it, I should say. That's a link to our YouTube. Yeah, I mean, that's a good rule, Valinar. I would agree with that. Because most people think it's thin enough when it's a wash. And you should double your water from there. There we go. Thinning MSP paints. Quindy just posted up that link. So yeah, so there's the video. And then if you go to my Patreon at Painting Big, then you'll find the handout that goes with it so that you can refer to the formulas more easily. And that's all free. I did it for ReaperCon last year because I think it's useful. The information is so fundamentally useful that I think it deserved to be free. I tend to do that for my Patreon, and sometimes I get, like, people are annoyed with me. Other Patreon people are like, you should never give away anything for free. And I'm like, no, I totally should. Everybody needs to know this, but that's me. So yeah, totally check it out, Sleepy. Like, go and click on Quindy's little link there and just save it in another window. Or go searching. But I think it's just generally good about paint consistency. It talks about some of the pitfalls and how you have to thin a little bit more when you're blending if you're adding white and stuff like that. Oh yeah, stretch break, everybody. If you've been sitting in your chair like me for an hour, please. Oh, it's a lot easier. Yeah, Harumph. Yeah, right? And it stays at the right consistency. Like, you might have to remix it. Because it will fall out of solution, because it's a glaze. There's just no way to keep something that watery in solution unless you're using glazed medium, but that's going to change the consistency of it and make it work a little differently. But yeah, I'm glad you're getting good mileage out of it. Oh yeah, and our Discord community is pretty good here too, Sleepy. The Reaper Discord. The Reaper community is pretty awesome, so... And then, of course, ReaperCon is on for later this year as well. At least we are fingers crossed on it. Stretching. Stretching, stretching, stretching. Always stretch. I'm going to go and do my floor stretches, and then we will resume. There we go. Oof. Back we are. I return. Yeah, I mean, it's all in what you're used to, right, Valadar? For me, I'm so used to using water that when I add an additive, it really throws me off. So... but if you're used to building your glazes with additives, you're going to be used to the way that changes the viscosity of the paint. And that's what you're getting, is you're changing viscosity and you're changing surface tension. You know, you're changing a couple of factors. So yeah, if you want to use a glazing medium, then rock it. And if it works for you, keep using it. But all my formulas are built with just water. So you can like use that kind of as a, in general, you could use, man, I don't know that there's a ratio, really. You could swap them 1-to-1, but that might make it a bit goopy. You may end up having to add just a tad more water. It depends on what you're doing. I don't want to really give a benchmark there, I don't think, because it's so different. Depending on what medium you're using, too, the viscosity is going to change. No, Bryce, I've been very bad. Actually, let me write that down on my list of Reaper paint order here. Yeah, I think both David and I have been so busy with work this week that we have not gotten our classes entered, so Lord knows. But we've both kind of decided that we're just going to teach a couple. Like, we'll just pay for our own hotel room. I think that's kind of the agreement, because I've got usually so much to do. And if it means that we have to get a table and we don't get to be in Artist Alley, then that's the way it is. But, you know, we'll see. But we'll be around. We'll be around. Reaper class submissions. Yeah, I know I'm going to be teaching my, probably my color theory and pigment class, Bryce. But I kind of haven't decided on the others. Like, there are some classes ideas I have that I really want to teach on a bust. And Reaper doesn't have Julie's busts yet. And they probably will by ReaperCon, but I don't want to take the chance, really. So, keeps you from putting too much on. That makes sense, Valandar. Yeah, I need to remind David to do his class submissions as well. But yeah, like, I'd like to do kind of a more elaborate faces class based on busts. Yeah, Jabberwock. Well, everybody's got a different way to do it. And when they instruct you in doing it a certain way, if they use medium or if they don't, then adding medium is going to just be a game changer. So that's where you get to develop your way of doing it. If you choose to work with a medium when they haven't, or if you choose not to work with a medium when they do, is that you're going to have to experiment and you're going to have to see what works. Which, you know, some people really love to experiment. Oh, do they? Oh, that's good. Yeah, we were just looking at it, and I with the painting competition and everything, I just don't think I can do 4 classes. Like, I haven't done 4 classes for years at ReaperCon because of that. So I think that 4 classes would be way too much for me. I'd be exhausted. And I like to actually be able to, like, carry on intelligent conversations and stuff at the con, at least until Sunday, when I am no longer capable of carrying on intelligent conversations. Your mileage may vary. If you seek out Anne on Sunday. I'm going to be the tired Anne. The very sleepy Anne. Alright, you can bring up some of this light. Yeah, Angry Ham, I'm all for experimentation. I mean, a lot of my mini painting was self-taught. Because, I mean, the Mini Painter Yahoo group was around then, but nobody was doing, like, video. And so you had to go just with their description of it. And some people just aren't very good at writing directions. Like, it's a special person who can really write really good directions, right? So, I kind of had to reverse engineer a lot of stuff. I'm going to grab some of this yellow. Even though it's too yellow, I feel. But I think I might add a little bit of my NMM Gold highlight to my Osirian Sand. Because I'm like, the Osirian is reading really, really pale. And I feel like the other option is to use a glaze of this NMM Gold highlight over the top of this. And I think that even this is going to come off as not very yellow. We'll see. I think I had to really seriously punch the yellow to get it to go on this edge, yeah. Yeah, see, very different. MSP starter set. Yeah, if you haven't ever used MSP paint, then the starter set is a really good place to start. I mean, it is named appropriately. Got a little bit of paint pull there, but I'll dress it up. Yeah, I think it's kind of going to be a mixture now of the MSP, the NMM Gold highlight, and the Osirian Sand to get the right highlights here. I think so. Because I kind of like that. Looks pretty good. Oh yeah, Quindy has a point. If you do buy directly from the Reaper online store, there's free shipping after a point for certain places, and there's also free miniatures that you get for spending a certain amount. So I'm gonna build myself another color over here, guys. I'm gonna add in a little bit of my desert sand to Osirian Sand and to NMM Gold highlight, and I'm gonna see how that works out for a highlight color for my bricks. You'd have to mail order them, huh, Joe? Yeah. Yeah, Norscan. I mean, it's always what's helpful is, I guess, to try a few paints from several lines that you're interested in. But, you know, if you can talk to people who use them and kind of, you know, the big difference is going to be some of them are thicker and they're going to be like good coverage out the gate, but then it'll be a little harder to thin them to the, like, for thinner paint applications. So it's like that viscosity and, you know, how thick or thin they are, like how much work you have to do to get them to certain points for like washes and stuff like that is the big difference. And adhesion. The paints that are thicker out the gate usually don't stick to the model as well. It's a function of just the resin that they're built in. So Master Series, you may have to put more coats on at the beginning, but you also will find them easier to thin and they'll stick better in general. Those are your big differences. I speak as she who made the Master Series paint line, so I have some experience. I really hated. In fact, I went and I used my one of my Vallejos again, just a little while ago. I was using my SS Camo Black Brown because I really like the color. But it was just so easy to just rub it off. Like, oh, okay. I'm glad, Lord Nobody. I'm glad the Learner Paint Kit worked for you. Rhonda wrote those. She's Bird with a Brush. She has an awesome blog, too. So for free, you can go and read her blog and you can get even more awesome tips. Yeah. Valandar, you're just a little bit biased. A little bit. I mean, I appreciate the endorsement. I mean, Scale 75 is good paint. Like, they need to standardize their finish, though. Some of the colors seem very matte. Other ones don't seem matte enough. Some of them seem just about right. Like, that's my biggest problem. Like, when Scale 75 first came out, I thought it was a very good paint. Like, probably, like, the closest to Master Series. But it had that inconsistency with the finish. I didn't like it. So, even with the tube paint, where I find it's very close to Master Series finish, and I tend to work with their tube paint pretty frequently, sometimes I find that it's frustrating because one of those colors will be just glossier, and I'll have to doctor it. Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, I grabbed the starter set and try them. Yeah, I mean, and Pure White, I still feel our Pure White is the best white on the planet. Yes, agreed, Angry Ham. That's why I think it's good to just start with a small set of general colors and then work out from there. Like, if you have a budget thing going on or you need to work on your budget, that's a great way to do it, because then you can just pick a new color when you start a new model. Right? Like, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to paint an orc for my next model, and I don't really have a good orc skin color, so I'm going to go and just get some olive greens and other greens. And then you can expand your paint collection in that, you know, and then maybe you're painting a unit of knights, so you get more metallics and things like that. So I think that's a very sane and good way to expand your hobby. Thanks, Val. I appreciate the vote of confidence. I try. Like, the teaching matters to me really a lot. It matters to me that you guys are able to, like, take what I teach you and use it, right? And that it's useful to you. That's a huge priority for me. So we're just lighting up. We're lighting up Sphinx's base here. We're going to light up the edge of this, too. There's a little bit of shadow that I put in between her paws, because she definitely, if I move her to where the light falls, I can definitely see there is a shadow there. So here is where, since we have the model fully assembled, we can take advantage of our overhead lights to really see where the light actually falls when we put, like, you know, okay, this is the direction of the sun, and here's Sphinxy, and I can see that there's still a shadow way back there, but I maybe need to brighten this a little bit. So using real world light sources to kind of understand where your shadows are falling is just such a useful tool. I always had an overhead lamp, and sometimes I turn on my camera light to get this, because the camera light is so much closer to Sphinxy. So I can see that if I turn her appropriately, there's still a dark shadow, like, at the back, but the rest of this actually does light up. So having a little camera light or something, this is my document cam, so it has a built-in light, so it's a very handy little tool to click on and off. Or just keeping a little light like the Reaper Mini Sun. These little pen lights that are LED powered, these guys can be so useful, because likewise, you can position it exactly where your light source is. And you could start, you know, say, okay, well, there's my light source. And yeah, just at the back there, it's going to be a little shadowy, but everywhere else is lit up. So if you were not sure where to highlight and shade, then having a little light like that you can, you know, target. Just make sure you're always looking at it from the same direction. Oh, bye, Twistoma. Have fun. Really, I like some of the Citadel texture stuff a lot. I love their snow. Their snow is fantastic. But then I haven't used a lot of the Vallejo texture stuff. I don't use texture pastes often these days. I like to sculpt the detail. But they are certainly very useful. But I do like the Citadel Snow. I like how sculptable it is. I like how I can pat it down into shapes and have it lay pretty flat with a minimum of texture. Like, it's really a good snow surrogate, I think. Just going to put a little bit more light there. Yeah, some starter kits, some paint companies seem to believe that a starter kit should be exhaustive, and Reaper doesn't necessarily believe that. Like, really, we want to give you the tools that you can use to have a good, firm foundation and to try out our paint. Like, we always wanted to put out, and now we're putting out more of the little sets, and that helps too, but just a chance for you to try the paint. We really believe that if you try it, you're going to like it. You know, even if you don't use it for everything, you're going to see the usefulness of it. We have faith in the quality of our paint product at this point. It somewhat depends on your style too. If you like using thicker paint and a wet palette, then you are going to be, you're going to like some of the thicker formulations maybe for some things. But when you start doing like glazes and stuff like that, you might want to switch to a paint more like ours. So stays in solution a little bit better. All right, so the other thing we need to remember is that as these cracks, if the light's coming in at an angle, it's going to hit like the back of the crack and really, really come up there. This is what gives a three-dimensional look to cracks, is when you determine that it's hitting the back side of the crack here and you bring it up. Usually with just a little bit of a line. My paint's a little thin for this, so I probably should thicken it up or mix a new puddle. But you can see how adding in that little highlight there makes the crack look 3D, more 3D. That's what we're doing here. I'm using my Osirian sand for this. Yes. It's and it's not a dead matte, Joe, because I really feel like dead matte really distorts color. It's a matte with just a little bit of life in it. You probably, if a paint company saw it, they'd probably call it an eggshell. But I mean, I'm not mixing anything in my paint. You can see how matte the paint is on camera. So I'm not getting any hot highlights, you know, I can get a bit of a sheen, but that's it. And you need that really to get depth of color. You have to have a little bit of life. You can't do dead matte. So I feel like this is the matte that I always wished existed, because I come from a 2D art background, and they call things matte over there that are definitely not matte, like they're satin at best, and that always frustrated me as a kid, because I always wanted a matte finish. So when I got to create my own paint line with Reaper, I made that correction and made a paint line that was exactly the level of matte that I wanted. Not many people get to design their own paint lines, so I do feel special. All right, so yeah, and then a little bit on the edge here, just to bring that out. We're getting some nice effects, some nice light. See, we're getting a nice light here, and then it falls down, and then we've got almost the suggestion that the light is coming off of these rocks onto these lower rocks. See where it's lighter, where I've kept it lighter down there, and that's exactly what should happen. So we are going to want to bring out some highlights on areas that do stick out a little bit here on the face of this. Bring those out just a little bit more. And we need to probably put a darker shadow right under this and maybe right under that. We want to make sure that the light is coming up and that we have light, like a definite bounced light. Once we do the real bright light on these stones, there's going to be a lot of bounced light here. Yes, the base comes with the model, Fatherwind. Julie Guthrie sculpted this. She's awesome. She's known for doing a lot of our best dragons. And she and her partner, Bob Rodolfi, really love to do like scenic bases. And so Sphinx was a good way to do that and to work her Egyptian background in. But yeah, this is a lovely, lovely model. The item number is this, 77576. Highly recommended. I've had so much fun painting this. It's taken me a long time because she's a big mini, but she really is done well. Oh, there you go. Quindy just linked it if you want to go look at it in the store. It's really, because it's bones material, it's very inexpensive as well, Father. But yeah, I really like her. I'm very happy with how she's coming out. Now it's just getting the rocks right. If I can get the rocks right, then I'll be happy. Let's see, what are we at? Oh yeah, we're almost finished. We've just got, 5-10 minutes left. So I'm just gonna bring in some light just where I can see, like if I tilt this, I can see the top. So like act like you're the sun looking down and see the areas that you can see. And wherever you can see a deep shadow, it means that this shouldn't be this deep of a shadow, because that means there should be light. If I'm the sun, I can see this spot. That means I'm lighting it up. So I need to work with my shadows around here and make sure that they aren't actually painted on so dark, because it's not strictly correct. On the other hand, over here where she's got her wing shadow is coming in over here. So we do need darker shadows over there. But yeah, taking a camera's eye view, when you've got, like, if you've got a cam, to look at it like this, to look at it from the perspective, especially if you turn on the light, boom. Now you can really see where the hard shadows fall, right? So... and this is just painted in way too dark here. So that gives you an idea, and you can follow this. You can just paint what you see on the camera. So this is actually really, really handy in this particular circumstance. And then what you can't see should be in at least a bit of shadow. So it's a way to envision your light sourcing a little bit better. Bye, Shadow Raven. Have fun. It was great to have you on the stream, as usual. Thanks, Eat to Surf. Yeah, I wanted her to be really dark African. Like, I wanted to really go for that deep, deep skin color. She even has bluish shadows on her skin. And that's thus the blue-black for the hair. Oh, are the wings not separate anymore? Sometimes we change it. But I thought that we did have the wings separate because it was easier to fit her in a... These definitely were separate, Fatherwind, when I painted it. Thanks, Zen. Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts, actually, is the skin to fur transition. I really like it. I'm glad you like it, too. Makes me happy when other people see the parts of the mini that make me happy and they like it, too. Sometimes they're factory glued and sometimes they're not. It depends on how big the blister is. You could email questions@reapermini.com, Father. If you email questions@reapermini and ask, they'll get back to you pretty promptly, probably within a day or two. I think Katie's still doing questions, but John may have taken it over. But they'll, if you ask them, hey, are the Sphinx wings attached or not attached, they'll actually go down and look, or they'll already know. Oh, you won one and it was not attached. So Otter Mama says her recent Sphinx experience is not attached. I'm going to add some water. When you work with a well palette, you do need to add water every once in a while. Like after an hour, I typically will refresh my wells. Sure, no problem. I mean, I will tell you, they're very easy to glue in, and they glue in really well. Like, I didn't have to putty these at all, Father. They fit really, really nicely up against the model. Like, this is the only side where you can kind of see a demarcation, but I could disguise that better with paint, and probably will. Because there, it's more like I can see the demarcation because my colors are a little bit different. So another way to do this, guys, would have been to set up all my highlights and shadows on the model to begin with. So if I just come in with a big brush and broad strokes and kind of set up in the beginning, like this is in light, this is in shadow, and kind of underpainted the model a bit, then I wouldn't have to go and kind of painstakingly be looking at this now. This is how my boyfriend David paints this. He'll hit the whole thing and he'll get his light strong where he wants it. And then he'll go back and he'll do all the details. So there's two different ways to do this. Like there's probably more than that, to be fair. They could have missed. Yeah, I mean, we do add a lot of different figures, so it's possible they missed adding the multi-part note. But yeah, so yeah, we'll keep going for 4 more minutes. I'm going to just get this. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take up this shadow because we determined that it was not correct. Not correct shadow. Too dark. So I'm taking my base, my desert stone base, and I'm painting it over that to bring up that shadow more. And it's kind of a glaze. It's a heavy glaze because I wanna take it up more than a little. So playing around, but I kind of like the whole step-by-step thing. It lets me really understanding light is not one of my like key like things that came easy to me, and I'm still working on it. So for me, I find that if I force myself to kind of do this slow evaluation of light and where it should be, so a little bit of shadow needs to be there, but not a lot, that helps me learn it better. Whereas some people come in with a very, very strong understanding of how light falls, and they have a bit of an advantage there, kind of like I have an advantage with color. Everybody's got a free card. There's something in mini painting that will come naturally to you in general. So that's a little bit better. That's a more of a subtle shadow. I'll still work with that. I need some warmer colors. When warm light is reflecting off of the environment, it tends to come back reddish. I've noticed on my studying the rocks around my walk. I stare at rocks way too much. David made fun of me in Yosemite National Park because I was like, "Oh, look at this rock! Oh, look at that rock! Oh my gosh, what an awesome rock!" He's like, "It's a rock." There is some form of reality where I would have been a geologist. Because I do love rocks. I should just do the art and geology textbooks. Yeah, Yosemite is totally about the rocks, but still, people who are not totally into rocks like to look at other parts of it, like waterfalls and trees. But I love the rocks. I'm all about the rocks. Collecting them. Everything else takes effort, yeah. What happens if the light source in the display setting doesn't match the light source as painted? It'll usually still translate well, original. Like, that happens all the time, right? Like, we paint something with a strong directional light source. Maybe I can steal one of David's. Yeah, give me a second. Let me see if I can steal. Well, or maybe this one. Okay. So, this is what I've just been working on. And, so this is painted with a strong directional light source. You can see how the shadows go. So what is going to happen is that if you looked at this model from the back, you would be like, wow, what a dark model. Then as you walked around to the front, so I can point her away from my main light source up here, and it still carries. Like, it's just you see the paintwork then. Whereas if you put her in a situation where the light source is falling, then you see the natural shadow. Now this turns almost black on the camera, right? Because now you're getting the natural shadow. But if I turn her away from this, you can still see the shadow, but now you're seeing the shadow that I've painted in. So it still conveys the information, no matter what the light source is. That's what dramatic light sourcing does, is that it'll look right no matter where you're looking at it from, because the model will be consistent with itself. And you have to paint the basing to match. Like, the basing also has to reflect the light source in order for that to work. But yeah, if you do it right, original, then it's going to look great no matter where. Yeah, David does have a light free card. I have a color free card. Like, there are times he and I argue about it because I'm just like, no, color gut says. What was it he was doing? It was Techless. It was the one he showed you, Bryce, where I was like, no, it needs to be much lighter. It needs to be off-white. It needs to be really light. And he was just like, no, red, whatever. I'm like, no, the only one I like of that is the pink, and we can't paint Techless pink. They'll never give you a golden demon. So finally he did that off-white, and it was the best choice ever. So it's like, do not argue with me about color. I never say that, but it's in my head. I know you liked the red. You liked the horrible dark red. I thought that was the ugliest color scheme ever. I couldn't believe you liked it. Bryce, what are you thinking? The off-white was the best. Yeah, yeah. That was what my gut said to go in the first place. But then I always question that too, because I love neutrals. And I know I love neutrals. And I know that other people don't necessarily lean on neutrals like I do. So when my gut said he needs to be off-white, I kind of went a disbelief, like, okay, is this just me liking neutrals? But I felt it needed the contrast. But yeah. But I didn't like the red at all. Oh, Lord. I was not into it. So sometimes just listen to your gut, guys. And you know what, though? If David had decided to paint it that coral color, I would just gone with it. It's his project. If he wants to paint it that way, great. If I ever painted the model, I wouldn't go there. But it's like, it's your own thing. When you paint the model, he doesn't, I'm sure he doesn't like my pink halfling either. I took her head off again, by the way, guys. But look, she's got more paint on her. And I'm adding a lot of dirt. See the dirt? I haven't dirtied her feet yet. But she's got a lot of brown smudges on her shirt and her pants now. And I beat up all the leather. See, the leather straps have got a lot of nicks on them. And I got the other freehand kind of mapped in, so now I can work on it. But yeah, so Halfling is coming along. I realized that I didn't texture up here, and I needed to, so I popped her head off. Didn't like the pink, yeah. If he wants to paint it wrong, he'll never live it down. No, I mean, he'll just have to deal with me kind of looking at it and grimacing. But I always listen to him on light. Like, even when I don't like it, I'll listen. Because he knows light so much better than me. Like, that's why it's useful to have friends around, guys, who have different free cards than you. And you always want to take it with a grain of salt. Because, you know, just like I said, it is your mini. And you can paint it however you want. But if you have a friend who's really good at light or really good at color, it's just so useful to have them around. Because they can kind of like, if you're not sure something is working, you can kind of give them, you know, kind of a check. Say, hey, what do you think? Discords are good for that. If you like, especially if you've got Discord friends, like on the Reaper Discord, who you've seen their work and you know they're good at this or that or the other thing, and they're willing to take the time to critique your work. That can be very, very, very valuable. Yeah, technique. Technique is the fundamental. It's just like the old masters always said. It's like you learn the rules to break them. So once you know the techniques, you can exploit them and tweak them and do other stuff with them. It gives you the freedom to go anywhere with it at that point. Even though this rock appears smooth, I'm doing like kind of varied patches on it, guys. And that's because it just makes it a little more visually interesting. And it's also because the rock next to it has a lot of those varied surfaces. So I want there to be a little bit of consistency there. But yeah, so do ask for feedback. I think I will maybe make these gold. We'll see if it'll be enough to make it kind of stand out, these little coins down here. So yeah, you can add some stippling or some different kind of blotchiness to the rock and then accentuate that to get a painted texture even on flat stones. If you want to spice things up. There is a lot of times that I will sculpt, when I'm sculpting basing, I'll sculpt my rock relatively flat, but then I'll take advantage of slight imperfections on it to suggest this kind of different modeling effect. And that helps. You can fake it. Bryce, that means you're learning. It just takes time to internalize, right? It just takes, I think you're selling yourself way short. What I think you're good at, Bryce, is composition. I think your free card is composition. Like both structurally and in the sense of a greater, like, you know, like scene, and also just an individual model. Like when I've seen your heavy conversions or your scratch sculpts, is like you have a very good sense of space and balance and dynamism. So if I had to guess at what Bryce's free card is, that's what I would guess. I mean, I can't do light either, but I fake it pretty well now. It helps so I can go and stare at David's stuff in the other room. And Kirill's. He's got a Kirill commission. And so I can stare at Kirill's work. I'm learning. Your free card is procrastination. Oh, everybody's free card is procrastination, Valendar. You've surely got another free card. But you know what? You may never see it. It may take a friend to see it. Because sometimes we can't, ourselves, we don't necessarily know. I mean, I know color's my free card just because it's always been so easy for me. when other classmates in art school struggled with color, I didn't even have to try to ace my color theory class. I just showed up and took the exams and did the projects. So sometimes it's very evident what you're good at, but sometimes it takes some time, and sometimes it'll take other people looking at your work and saying, wow, you're really good at X. And you're just like, I just do it. I never thought about it. And that's the sign that you have a kind of a natural aptitude for a particular type of form of art. But I think everybody's got something that they're drawn to or that they're good at. It's just sometimes we need other people to awaken us to the fact that we're good at it. Because it's outside, the outside assessment sometimes that can see it. We may not see it at all. All right, I guess we're about at where we can end the stream because we started more or less on time. Free card is making mistakes. That's an awesome free card, Max, because mistakes are where you learn. Mistakes are more likely to stick in your head and get your attention, and you'll remember them. So making mistakes and being okay with it is just really good. So I'm liking this, guys. Like, we can see how everything's coming in. It's okay that I can see the edges. That's all right. But I'm seeing the light now. Like, look at this. You can see the fall of light coming down the front, can't you? And you can see the shadow here, and you can even see the reflected light coming in. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? That's cool. I think it's cool. I still feel like I need warmer reflected shadows, so I'm going to have to figure out what color I need to get that warm reflected shadow. But yes. 2 more containers down. Reaper Miniatures. Grats. Super grats. Hey, look, Sphinx is almost done, Reaper. Hold on, let me pull back. Let's do our traditional pull back and look at the whole model thing. Yeah, I'm getting there. I can see that light coming down now. I really like that. Gonna work on it. Continue to work on it. But yeah, so she is quite good. You're ready for a nap, I believe it. Yeah, the blue-black hair I really like. I like the blue highlights on the hair. It makes her more otherworldly, and it gives us that blue, that repeated blue color accent, too. So, yay, Sphinxy! So, guys, tomorrow it really is Lisette. So, for Friday Lisette, and we'll continue with that dark skin tone she's got. Comic booky feel, yeah. High drama, right? Do you, Dorian? Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking that she's going to be for sale on my Patreon next month. I think she'll be the last week of May. We'll put up 1 model for sale every week. I don't sell much, so. And work is fairly rare. But yes, thank you everybody for hanging out with us today. And now that Justin is like ready for a nap. Justin, who are we rating? Disembodied voice. We are ready for a break. I'm ready for my walk and for lunch. I woke up hungry today. I hate that. I mean, I ate my breakfast, but I still feel like I want more. Oh, thanks with the Prime sub, AQ Parks. Awesome. Yeah, everybody have fun. And, brush for hire. Sweet. Okie dokie. I will see you all tomorrow for Lisette. I'll be streaming on my channel later on today. I think we'll do some D&D and probably paint on Xandros or Cassia. All right? Talk to you later.